right, 3, 2, 1.
Well, welcome everybody. This is Dr. Judy Pearson. I want to welcome you to Lunch Bunch with Dr. Judy. This is a program that's offered by Delaware Hospice. We have been doing this the first Friday of every month for, I think, close to 10 years. So we have done a really wide range of topics from loving your aging self to breaking the bad habit of comparing yourself negatively to others to dealing with regrets after loss. I really enjoy this. We have a really great group of people that come regularly to Delaware Hospice, and I love that we can do this virtually and expand out to an even bigger audience. So welcome back to those who are returning, and welcome to all those who are joining us for the first time. The program is being recorded, so if you decide you'd like a friend to watch it, or you think a family member should really watch it, I will be sending a link out once I have it of the recording to the mailing list, and you can invite your friends to watch. If you're not on our mailing list, or if you want a copy of the handout and you didn't get it, then contact Sandra Satterfield. Her email address should be coming up on your screen. It should be part of an announcement, so that you can email her and she will send you a copy of the handout that goes with this in case you didn't get it. Before we start, I'm going to tell you about next month's program. All of our programs, of course, begin at 12:30 and go until 1:30, assuming I can stick on to time. Next month on August 7th, we're going to do a topic called Your Most Embarrassing Habit is a Gift from Your Insides. All of us engage in behaviors and have thoughts we know are irrational, and yet knowing this doesn't make them stop. These personal idiosyncrasies can be annoying and even disruptive, but trying to push them away rarely works. What might be more helpful is figuring out where they stem from. Even the most seemingly irrational behaviors probably make sense if put back in their original context. For example, a need for control may be rooted in growing up in a very chaotic family. Understanding the deeper emotional roots of behavior may be the only way to finally uproot them. The poet Rumi wrote, "That which haunts us will always find a way in. The wound will not heal unless given witness. The shadow that follows us is the way in." Your most embarrassing habit is the part of you that refuses to lie about the fact that something still bothers you, something is still troubling you. So we're going to talk more about that because I think it's the key to really attaining good emotional health. It involves unlocking that secret and unlocking your life by getting to the root of what drives that behavior. And I know all of us have some habit or way of being in the world that we feel embarrassed about and wish we could just stop. And people will, say things like, well, it's just irrational. You should stop. And my experience is knowing that doesn't do a darn bit of good except make you feel more ashamed because you know it's irrational. But you know what? It's actually very rational. If you can trace back its roots, it was some adaptation to a difficult situation, probably when you were growing up. It's outlived its usefulness, but it's rooted in strong feelings, which is why it's hard to let go of. Anyhow, I love to talk about that topic, and we will be talking about that next month. But let's talk today about gratitude. The one thing I want to say right off the bat is that gratitude can only be a benefit to you if it's authentic. That means accepting that if you're human, there are times when you really need to vent about what is difficult in your life, and that it's okay to do that. This is also about taking the time to notice what is good and to talk about that. But it's not an either or situation. You can vent about what bothers you, and you can still stop to experience what is good in your life. Um, so it's possible to feel gratitude and to feel annoyed, and that's being true to yourself and being human. And I'm not telling you that the goal in life is to always be grateful and have a happy face on all the time. I think the goal in life is to be authentic. But if you're being authentic, you should probably be able to have times when you notice what's good in your life and taking time to notice what's good in your life, but also taking time to express the more difficult feelings in safe ways. The journey to gratitude can only come after an authentic journey. And you can feel gratitude even after something very difficult or painful in your life. But that journey to gratitude can only come after you do an authentic journey, which includes passing through that pain and a host of other challenging emotions. You can't leapfrog over those feelings to be grateful. You must be able to hold all of your experiences as true. However, even with very difficult things in our life, with time, you do want to find ways to notice and benefit from the good in your life. Um, uh, Joanne Cacciatore wrote an article called Gratitude as the Antidote to Grief. And I think she really captures this idea that you have to go through a journey to reach that gratitude. And I'm quoting from her. It requires us first to focus on the self, to take personal responsibility for our own suffering, to acknowledge it, to tell it and retell our story, to know ourselves well. It requires us to acknowledge that there is a healing in that suffering. It requires that we silence our minds, respect our body's response to grief, and be gentle with ourselves. It commands patience, intentionality, and a commitment to the insufferable pain that radiates from the tips of our hair to the tips of our toes, the agony that causes every cell in our body to ache. And I know if you've lost someone you really love, you know what I'm talking about. It requires us also to reach out for others, sometimes even strangers, and to accept that outreached hand with grace. Then, when we are ready, we must move beyond the self. We must see the suffering of others. We must acknowledge the other's pain without the fear of losing or diminishing our own suffering. So this is when you've gone through this journey of acknowledging the pain that you're feeling and been patient with yourself and kind to yourself. Then in time, you'll be able to broaden your horizons and acknowledge you will be able to acknowledge others' pain without the fear of losing or diminishing your own suffering. You will be grateful for what you have without taking away from that which you lost. She writes, let gratitude hang in the shadows, parallel to the grief. It is not magic, but it is transformative. So the key is to be real with yourself and others, to acknowledge and express pain that you feel, and what isn't good about right now. And in time, be able to see what's also good about right now. But that has to be a genuine journey to arrive at that gratitude. There is something called post-traumatic growth, and the concept behind post-traumatic growth is that even in the face of terrible trauma, people will also grow. But my experience is that you can't leapfrog over the pain and the suffering to get to the growth. You get there if you're true with yourself all along the way. Talk a little bit about how we define gratitude. Gratitude is generally defined as a quality of being thankful and a readiness to show appreciation and to return that kindness. According to Robert Emmons, who writes quite a bit about gratitude, and you'll see his name in quite a few of the references, gratitude has two stages. First is an acknowledgement of the goodness in our lives. Now, this doesn't require that our lives be perfect because none of us have perfect lives, but it's being able to see that overall life has elements that make it worth living. It's one of my favorite quotes from Agatha Christie. She wrote, I like living. I have sometimes been wildly, despairingly, acutely miserable, racked with sorrow, but through it all, I know quite certainly that just to be alive is a grand thing. That has helped me through some difficult times. So part one is acknowledgement of the goodness in your life. Part two is recognizing that the source of that goodness comes at least in part from outside yourself, that it's something that comes to you. And the goodness is something that's outside of you, that you're stopping to appreciate. Expressing gratitude and appreciation is both good for the giver and the receiver. It is as healthy to need appreciation as it is to give appreciation. So I don't want to make you think that this is all about only being appreciative of others. It's also important to be able to receive appreciation. And some of us are better giving than receiving, but you need to be able to do both. William James, who was a psychologist and a philosopher, said, the deepest principle of human nature is a craving to be appreciated. I often have people that say to me, I wish I could just love myself from within and not need love from outside myself. But the reality is we first learn to love ourselves by receiving love as infants. And receiving that love helps us to internalize it and kind of create a repository of love that we can draw on when people aren't available to provide us with that. But we are relational beings. We do need love from the outside and love from the inside. And again, not an either or proposition. You really need both. So James is right. One of the deepest principles of human nature is a craving to be appreciated. Mark Twain said once, I can live 2 months on a good compliment. So it's really important to find a balance between being able to express gratitude and being able to accept it. It's also equally important to balance being appreciative of what you have and identifying what you still want to bring into your life. Ryan Nemec wrote, if we spend all of our time being appreciative and content with the status quo, we draw attention away from future possibilities. Be mindful of a balance between aspiration and appreciation of your life. You know, it's like everything. You need to balance it out. So you want to be happy with what is and be accepting of what is, but you also want to have goals and you also want to have things that you aspire to. And again, not an either or. You can appreciate where you are right now, even if there's things that you still want to move forward to. The last thing I'm going to say is I'm going to say to you, as I say with any of my presentation, remember what works for you. You're going to hear many suggestions, but each individual is unique. So it's important to handpick the suggestions that you're going to hear today that resonate with you. Find the ones that work for you, because that's important. You're a unique individual. Some things speak to you more than they speak to someone else, and so listen to that. Always listen to your insides. It's such a gift. Okay, let's talk a little bit about why gratitude might be particularly important during the pandemic. Well, research suggests that that gratitude improves your immune system, reduces your risk for mental health problems like depression and anxiety. It improves your ability to handle stress, and it helps you stay connected to others. All of things which are crucial to surviving this pandemic. Sabrina Nawaz in the Harvard Business Review wrote, during a crisis, taking the time to thank others is vital to dampen loneliness, amp up social connections, and generate generosity. So this is a good time to be practicing gratitude. Now you may wonder, what can we be grateful for during the pandemic? Well, the answer for me was toilet paper, and I think for many other people it was too. But Zachary Alty on Psychology Today's website suggested a number of other things that we can be appreciative during this time, and I think they're obvious once you hear them. Gratitude for the heroes of healthcare who put their own safety at risk to care for total strangers simply because it is what they do. Gratitude for loved ones and a time of forced perspective to consider what really matters to us. I think this really is a time when we're forced to stop and think about what really matters. And I think in many cases, we realize it is our connections with others, and our concern now that they stay healthy. It puts that into sharper perspective. So those are just two things right off the bat to be grateful for. One author suggested asking yourself, what valuable lesson can I learn about my family and myself right now, as a way to identify things during the pandemic for which you can find gratitude. And again, that doesn't mean you don't get to vent and be unhappy about the hard parts. It's not an either or. There's a ton of research, believe it or not, on how beneficial gratitude is, and I'm going to tell you about some of that. There was one study in which adults were taught to cultivate an appreciative attitude and other positive emotions. And what they saw in that study was that there was an average reduction in cortisol, which is the stress hormone, of almost 25%, 23% drop in cortisol after people learned to be more appreciative. And 80% of the people in that study who learned to be more grateful, 80% had an improvement in their heart functioning. So I think it was perhaps done with a group of people who had heart problems. 80% of them saw a significant improvement in their health and their heart functioning after, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks of practicing gratitude. Another study conducted in 2015 found that patients with heart failure who wrote gratitude journals showed reduced inflammation. Inflammation is the key to so many illnesses. I'm telling you, I'm going to probably do a talk soon on inflammation. But anyhow, those who had heart failure who wrote in journals, they had reduced inflammation, improved sleep, better moods, and this reduced their symptoms of heart failure after only 8 weeks of practicing gratitude. 2 months, they did something. They wrote in a gratitude journal 2 or 3 times a week, and within 8 weeks, it reduced symptoms of heart failure. And they were sleeping better, they had less inflammation, and their mood was much better. Another study that looked at the use of gratitude journals found that those who were doing the gratitude journal found 16% reduction in physical symptoms. So 16% of the people felt like something in their physical body got better, 10% less physical pain, 19% increased in time spent exercising, 8% more sleep, 25% increase in reported quality of sleep, and participants were feeling better about their lives as a whole. They also said that they were more likely to be progressing toward their personal goals, and they felt more optimistic. So clearly, writing in a gratitude journal, which anybody can do, is something that's very good for the physical body and the emotional well-being. A more recent study, I think it was 2017, they did a 3-month trial of having subjects write in their gratitude journals, and they discovered that both reflective journaling, which means just writing about things that they felt grateful for, and reflective behavioral, which means finding things that people felt grateful for and then expressing that gratitude. Both those kinds of journaling had a significant positive impact on their well-being, their affect, which means their mood, and depression. It lowered rates of depression. So there's quite a few studies that have validated the power of things like gratitude journaling. Being thankful has also been shown to predict significantly lower risk of a range of diagnoses, including major depression, generalized anxiety disorder, phobia, nicotine dependence and alcohol dependence, drug abuse or dependence, and the risk of bulimia nervosa. So again, an appreciative, thankful attitude, reduced risk of a number of mental health diagnoses. Gratitude can also enhance your self-esteem. People who are grateful generally have an enhanced self-esteem, and they think that's partly because it's due to their ability to appreciate other people's accomplishments and also their own. Yet another study found that a single act of thoughtful gratitude produced an immediate increase in happiness of 10%, and perhaps more significantly, a 35% reduction in symptoms of depression. So 10%, a single act of thoughtful gratitude, telling somebody you're grateful, produced increased levels of happiness by 10%, 35% reduction in symptoms of depression. And they think this is really telling. These benefits from this one act lasted from 3 to 6 months. So those people who did something thoughtful and expressed their appreciation reaped the benefits of that for 3 to 6 months after one single act of gratitude. I think that tells you how powerful this is. And those who, some in the study also kept a gratitude journal, that led to even more lasting benefits. It lasted even longer if they're doing the gratitude journal. Research has found that gratitude strengthens your relationships. It helps people form and maintain relationships, and it improves relationship satisfaction. So people within relationships are happier when they're practicing gratitude. Gratitude can also help people make new friends. I have a lot of people who often feel kind of lonely, and as we're getting older and we're not necessarily in workplaces, we don't, find it as easy to make friends. So this gratitude thing can actually be very good for people who are looking to form some new friendships. The author of the studies wrote, one study found that thanking a new acquaintance makes them more likely to seek a more lasting relationship with you. So simple act of saying, thank you, I really enjoyed going to the movies with you. It would increase the likelihood that that relationship would continue to develop into a more lasting friendship. Another study found that people who were grateful had less aches and pains. I think that's a really good reason to do it, because at 67, I am having way more aches and pains than I used to. Never imagined it when you're young, and it's a different world when you get older. My mother used to always say, you feel like the same person, but your body's not cooperating anymore. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. People who are grateful also felt that they were generally more healthy than other people. People who are diagnosed with hypertension, who counted their blessings once a week, just once a week, they sat and counted their blessings, had a significant decrease in their systolic blood pressure. So if you're struggling with hypertension, high blood pressure, counting your blessings once a week, not even every day, once a week, will lower your systolic or diastolic, your systolic blood pressure. That seems like a pretty easy thing to do for the well-being of your heart. This same research also suggests that people, I said poople. Okay, I hope you don't have that typo. There is research that suggests people who survive traumatic experiences will fare better if they are helped to develop gratitude. The authors from that study concluded gratitude may promote positive outcomes following trauma. Positive outcomes is just a researcher way of saying, people benefited from developing an attitude of gratitude after they experience something traumatic. They find that people who are more grateful are less materialistic. Maybe that's a good thing, since it's not as easy to go to stores as it used to be. They're also less apt to judge themselves and others in terms of their financial success or possessions. So it unhooks you from evaluating yourself and others in terms of materialistic things, which I think is a good thing. We live in a culture that does put way too much emphasis on that. I went too fast through my own presentation. They also found that people who had an attitude of gratitude were less envious and more apt to share their feelings with others compared to those who are less grateful. So they're also willing to open up to other people, and they're less envious of other people. And that willingness to open up to other people is also very significant, because there's a ton of research that shows if you do talk about things that are bothering you, it really does improve your health and certainly your psychological health. Research has also found that gratitude is strongly and positively correlated with authentic living and negatively correlated with self-alienation. So what they're really saying is that when you have an attitude of gratitude, you're probably living a more authentic life, and less apt to be self-alienated. And what self-alienated really means is you're cut off from your own feelings. You don't have a connection between yourself, your head, and your heart. You're disconnected from who you really are, because you're probably so busy being who you think everybody else wants you to be. So it actually turns out that people who practice gratitude are more likely to live an authentic life, to be true to who they really are, and less likely to be living a life where they're being the person everybody else wants them to be versus who they really feel they are on the inside. I often think that distinction between your public self and your private self sometimes gets misunderstood, though, because I think sometimes those of us can be very good at presenting a certain kind of way, also have other little parts behind that that are hurting or sad or not as strong as the person we project. And sometimes we can get ourselves to think that, well, this person back here who's scared and hurting is the real me, and this person I put out in the world is the fake me. I like to say that we're all of those things. You do have that ability to function in the world and be competent, and you also have little hurt parts that need your time and attention, and they really coexist. It isn't like one's fake and the other one's all who you really are. We're really a mix of both of those parts of our personality. Um, Grateful people also report higher levels of self-transcendence. Oh, I'm murdering that word. Self-transcendence, or a spiritual sense of being interconnected with all of life and responsible for others. That's that kind of spiritual experience of feeling like we are all interconnected. And so people who practice gratitude are more likely to have that sense of being connected to everybody, which is a very good thing to feel right now, when we're facing a pandemic. It's sort of that attitude of we're all interconnected, we're all in this together, and we need to wear masks because we are connected to the people who we pass by in the street, and we don't want to pass on an illness to them. Grateful people also report higher levels of positive emotions, life satisfaction, vitality, optimism, and lower levels of depression and stress. So you can't kind of go wrong with learning how to be grateful, and it doesn't have to take a lot of your time. If you have the handout, you'll see that I have a chart that I took from a study by Amen, that lists the 31 benefits of gratitude you didn't know about and how gratitude can change your life. And it breaks down into the emotional, personality, social, health, and career benefits. So I'll just pick out one. The emotional, people who practice gratitude are more resilient than other people. They're more relaxed than other people in terms of personality, less self-centered, more optimistic, increased self-esteem. In terms of health, improved sleep, less sick. They have greater longevity. They have more energy. In terms of career, they're better at networking. I haven't looked at this research as much. They're good at reaching goals. They have improved decision making. So it's really good for your career as well. Socially, they're more social. They have healthier marriages. They tend to be kinder. They have more friendships, and they have deeper relationships. So it's an amazingly easy thing to do that has amazing payoffs. So let's talk a little bit about how to practice gratitude. I'm going to remind you to be true to yourself. You're going to have times when you need to vent about what's bothering you before you can actually stop and appreciate the good around you. Being true to those feelings, to your feelings and gratitude, doesn't need to be mutually exclusive. Sometimes if I can't really get to a place where I'm feeling grateful, it's usually because something's really bothering me and I need to vent about it, which might be just, screaming into a pillow or writing a letter I'll never mail, but to just get those feelings out in some safe way. And then usually when I move that on, I'm more receptive to noticing what's good in my life. So they don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can be true to yourself, which means acknowledging even those negative emotions, because they're also important to acknowledge, and they're also an inevitable part of life, and also finding ways to be grateful. So do what works for you. Different things appeal to different people. I know I've already said that, but Some people like to get one idea and stick with it and use that practice only. Other people like to mix it up. So just listen to your own heart in terms of what works for you. And believe me, this is not something that has to be at all time consuming. Um, but it does involve kind of making a commitment to do something that enhances your sense of gratitude. For me, often it's just something I do before I go to bed at night to just think about some things for which I am grateful. But you can start with something small. You can do any of the suggestions once a day, once a week, once a month. It gets easier as you do it, so it's really up to you. Start with what's doable. The big one that everybody, of course, talks about, and you heard it in the research, is to keep a gratitude journal. It's just exactly what it sounds like, a journal in which you write about what you're grateful for. You want to find a good time during the day for doing that. For some people, that's first thing in the morning. It would not be for me. I am bleary-eyed and can barely find my way to the coffee cup. So it's more likely to do something I'll do at the end of my day. But the idea is to just sit for a minute or a couple of minutes and reflect on things that you're grateful for during the day. It can be something mundane, it can be something big. It can be a kindness you received, a walk on the beach, your grandchildren, the sky. I don't know about you, but it's raining cats and dogs here. And I have a sister who's always optimistic who would say to me, yeah, but think how good it's going to be when the sun comes out. So I will be grateful. I'm grateful for the rain because it is feeding the plants that I don't want to really have to go out and water all the time. And I'll be grateful for the sun when it comes back. Another thing is obviously to think about the people that you love, and people who have loved you over the years, that you're grateful for. You can buy a journal, decorate the front. If you're a crafty person, you can make it fun. Or you can buy a journal, and not decorate it. It's whatever works for you. Try to be specific. There was one study in which people were divided into three groups. One group was asked to just write generally about things for which they felt grateful. The second group was to write about one thing that they felt grateful for, but to write 5 lines about this one thing that they felt grateful for, which really helped them to get a lot more specific. And the last group just kind of wrote about how much better off they were than other people. Well, of course, it was the second group that wrote about one thing about which they were grateful and wrote 5 lines about that one thing, who reaped the most benefits from practicing a gratitude journal. Again, if that's not what appeals to you, then you don't have to do it that way. But it's interesting that that study found that the people who did even just one thing they were grateful for and then were very specific reaped the most benefits from doing a gratitude journal. You can find gratitude journal prompts online. I've got links for you in the handout. There's a lot of articles that also have prompts. I'm just going to go through a few so you get a general idea. But if you feel like you're getting stale or bored and you want some other ideas, go online and type in gratitude prompts or look at any of the links I provided. You will find plenty of things. I'm grateful for these 3 things that I can taste. I'm grateful for these 3 things I can smell. I'm grateful for these 3 blue things. Just a way to get your mind to sort of look around and notice blue things. Something beautiful I saw today, someone I can rely on. I'm grateful for these 3 animals or birds. I'm grateful for these 3 friends. I'm grateful for these 3 things in my house. I'm grateful for my family because, and fill that out. Something good that happened to me this week. Something silly I'm grateful for. Write about a person in your life that you're especially grateful for and why. What skills or abilities do you have that you're grateful for? The things we do well, we tend to take for granted. Sometimes it's important to step back and realize not everybody does have that skill, and to be grateful that you have that skill. Write about music that you're thankful for. I think most of us have music that we feel greatly appreciative of, that have been important parts of our journey through life. What elements of nature are you grateful for and why? What's part of your morning routine that you're grateful for? I, for example, am very grateful for my peanut butter toast and my lavender wine jelly that I get from Lavender Fields here in Milton, Delaware. It's not like any other jelly I've ever had before. What is something you've learned that you're grateful for? What is a happy childhood memory? What are 5 hobbies or activities that you enjoy? This is an interesting suggestion. List 5 people in your life that are hard to get along with and write down at least one quality for each of them that you are grateful for. Now, again, you don't have to lie to yourself about the parts that are annoying, but you're sort of practicing the idea of realizing that everybody's a mixed bag. I mean, we all are. We all have noble and less noble parts. But, even just to stop and think and realize that even the people that can annoy the heck out of you, there might be something good about them that you just want to write about and acknowledge. Describe a family tradition that you're grateful for. Um, there's probably lots of family traditions we're not grateful for, but I know we all have some that we were grateful for. List something good that recently caught your attention and made you realize how fortunate you really are. List 2 struggles that you've experienced in your life and how you overcame them. Who or what helped you get through those trials? Um, Things that you're going to be grateful for because they got you through difficult times. What is one freedom that you often take for granted? What is a book that has meant a lot to you? What is a simple pleasure that you really value? What is one of the most worthwhile purchases you have ever made? I don't think that'll make it too materialistic, but there are things we go back and buy and we're like, you know what? Oh God, I'm so glad I bought these shorts. I live in them. So just something to make stop and think of the things in your life that you do appreciate and that do make your life pleasurable. Um, what's one of the greatest life lessons you've ever learned? What's an experience you feel lucky to have had? And what's something fun you've experienced in the past week? Now, you'll find more resources in your handout at the bottom about, how to do gratitude journals, journal prompts, all kinds of things that you'll find helpful, and they're listed at your handout. Mike Opland and many others have provided a number of other ways to express gratitude. So I'm going to review some of those just in case journaling doesn't appeal to you, but you're a crafty person or one of these other things appeals to you more. There's something called a gratitude jar. It's just what it sounds like. You get a jar and you fill it with little slips of paper of things you're grateful for. You could write one a day and put it in there. I heard somebody who said that they keep it for a whole year and then they look at it at the end of the year. I had somebody else who, one of the suggestions is you open it up when you're feeling down and you need something to uplift you. So fill in a jar with just little slips of paper that, include the description of something that you're grateful for. A gratitude tree. This is something that's really fun to do with kids. It involves listing things that you, and I'll say they, the kids, are grateful for and putting them on little paper leaves. So you cut out, there should be a picture in your handout. You cut out something that looks like a leaf. You put the thing you're grateful for on it. You punch a little hole at the end and you put a string through it and then you tie it onto the branches. Now what you could do is you can get some like little twigs or some small branches and put them in a vase, put some rocks at the bottom so they'll stand up. And then you just, you have a little tree and the kids add the leaves that have things for which they're grateful written on them and you hang them there. And then you can always look at them when you need to be reminded what's good in your life. A gratitude box involves filling a box for someone you love. So writing down things you're grateful for about that person. And you can invite other people to do this. If you have a big birthday coming up for somebody, it's a really wonderful thing to do for a significant birthday. Remember, we are starved for words of affirmation. We long to know that we're appreciated and that we contribute something to the world or to others. And so, putting together a box that other people add to, where they write answers to, like they write on a slip of paper, thank you for, and they list something they want to thank the person for. What I love about you, something you did for me for which I'm very grateful. We had a wonderful Thanksgiving many years ago when I was still living up in, I think I was living in Somerville then. Had this great Thanksgiving dinner where everybody had a cup at the table with their name on it. And throughout the course of the day, you were supposed to write down 3 things that you liked about each person and put it in their cup. And some people didn't know each other, but we hung out and we were cooking together and you got to know people and everybody came up with something. And so we filled those cups with those things that people really noticed and liked about them. And after dinner, the lights were down low. I remember this so vividly. And so all candlelight, and people went one at a time and read what was in their cups, the things that people had noticed and appreciated about them and liked about them. And it was so very moving. And, I think how often we fill ourselves with food because we hunger for love. And in this instance, we really fed ourselves love. Now, some of you have heard this story, but when I went to practice this same exercise with my family, I had a very different experience. And I'm sure any of you who live in normal dysfunctional families will appreciate this. I said we were going to do this, and my mother and father immediately were, what? And my father's like, I mean, maybe we should write down 3 things we think the other person can improve, and maybe we should write down what we don't like about them to make them grow. And I'm like, Dad, I think we're already really good at telling ourselves what we don't like about ourselves. I don't think we need more help with that. He's like, okay, okay. Yeah. And then later he's like, well, am I supposed to be honest? And I said, Dad, if you can't honestly think of 3 things you like about your members of your family, that's a pretty sad statement. I said, maybe you're just anxious about doing it. Just take time and look at people. And I think you'll think about the things that you do like about them, that you think are good about them. My mother kept saying, 3 things? I have to come up with 3 things, which is pretty scary when you think your own mother thinks that coming up with 3 things she likes about you is an awfully long list. But again, I think they were probably just nervous about having to do it. We ended up doing it. And of course, who do you think cried like babies when they read what was in their cup? My mother and my father. So we long to know that people love us, and that they notice things that they like about us. So a gratitude box can be an incredible gift to get somebody. And you can, if it's having a big birthday party, you can have people email them in. You can print them out and cut them up and put them in the box and give it as a gift on that special occasion. A gratitude walk is just what it sounds like. The gratitude walk is to go out and observe things in the universe, take it all in, be aware of nature, notice the color of the trees or the leaves, the sounds the birds make, the smell of the plants, and this, I'm reading a quote, and notice how your feet feel when you step onto the ground. So a gratitude walk is just that. It's going out for a walk and taking the time to just notice what's around you and notice what you're grateful for. Gratitude flower, very similar to a tree. You're just going to cut out a sort of central hole and then make petals that go all around it that have on it, the things for which you're grateful, or the kids you're doing this with are grateful for. Little kids can just draw a picture if they're not into writing words yet. But, it's just a way to even teach kids from an early age to notice what they should be grateful for, not take for granted. A gratitude letter can be a very powerful thing. It involves just what you would imagine, writing a heartfelt letter to someone you would like to thank. And it's important that you take the time to really think about how this person has helped you and had an impact on your life. Think of a few specific examples of ways in which they helped you in your life. And again, when people first sit down to do this, they're afraid they won't be able to come up with things. But if they really take a little bit of a trip down memory lane, they will remember things. There was a professor, I think it was at Kent State, who asked his students to write letters. And he found it had a very significant impact on their well-being. And I'm quoting from the author of the study. As they wrote up to 3 letters, results showed increasing benefits. The more letter writing people did, the more they improved significantly on happiness and life satisfaction. The new and potentially important finding is that depressive symptoms also decreased. By writing these letters, 15 to 20 minutes each, once a week for 3 weeks to different people, well-being increased significantly. So they gave them tests before they did this. They tested them afterwards in terms of reported emotional well-being, and they found a significant, meaning it wasn't random, increase in people's sense of well-being from simply writing 2 or 3 letters over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. So think about it. Sonia, and I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name, wrote an article called Expressing Gratitude, also expressed the importance of this. She wrote, express your appreciation in concrete terms. Perhaps it's your mom or a favorite uncle or an old friend. Perhaps it's an old coach or a teacher or a supervisor. Write him or her a letter now, and if possible, visit and read the letter out loud. Well, I think during the pandemic, visiting may not be an option, but you can certainly mail them. Describe in detail what he or she did for you and exactly how it affected your life. Mention how often you remember his or her efforts. Very powerful thing to receive. Somebody suggested this to me when I think they were concerned about a mother whose daughter had, I think, died of a drug overdose or committed suicide. And what this client of mine did was she wrote to the mother about life, because it's easy to only see the bad when someone dies under those circumstances. But she wrote a letter to this mother just to say, your daughter had some positive impact in the universe, and I'm one of the people she had a positive impact on. And here's some of the ways she had an impact on me. And even if it isn't somebody who dies under terrible circumstances, but if you lose somebody, for their loved one to get a letter saying, your husband, your wife, your partner, um, was really important in my life. They taught me to love books. We took one of my favorite trips, to the seashore. That's something you can always do that's incredibly helpful following a loss. People often don't know what to do when somebody's lost a loved one. Well, writing about the way in which their loved one had a positive impact on their life is a very powerful gift to give the person who's grieving. And in fact, one of my suggestions is that you write gratitude letters to people who have already passed away, who touched your life. Obviously, you're not going to mail them, but just, I think words of love that are uttered are never wasted. So it could also be incredibly healing for you. Many of us do have regrets that we didn't tell people that we loved, how important they had been to us. So it's not too late to write that letter. So gratitude letters are just exactly what they sound like, and they can be incredibly powerful for you as well as the receiver. And remember, I think it was one of the studies found that people who were writing gratitude letters, that those benefits lasted for a very long time. You can create a gratitude collage. That really involves taking pictures of things for which you are grateful. You can do it daily or weekly or monthly, and then assembling a collage from those pictures. I found something online. I pasted it into your handout. It was kind of a heart. They made a heart out of a collage of, it looks like maybe people that were important in their lives, but you could do that with, anything you photograph that is something you're grateful for. So they put the pictures arranged in the shape of a heart. I just thought it looked pretty darn cool. For some, just taking the time to contemplate things that they're grateful for is just as effective as writing it down. So if you're not a big writer and somehow that still feels too intimidating, just stopping and thinking about it will count and will have a positive impact on your life. I think the challenge is to practice expressing appreciation on a regular basis. Just taking the time, even if it's just once a day, to say, what, here's one thing I'm grateful for today. Compliments are also a way to acknowledge someone and express your gratitude to them. Some keys for giving good compliments include finding something genuine to praise the person for, using the person's name, making eye contact, and being specific. So, it doesn't hurt to stop and thank people, especially in the workplace or in your family, for things that they've done. When giving a compliment, consider focusing on a core strength. There's an institute called the Values and Action Institute, and they've developed a list of, they call them core strengths. I'm going to read some of them to you. So that's a good way sometimes to pick out what you like about a person and to give them feedback on it. Values and Action Institute offers the following character strengths: creativity, curiosity, love of learning, perspective, courage, bravery, perseverance, honesty, zest, love, kindness, social intelligence, which means good people skills, teamwork, fairness, leadership, forgiveness, humility, prudence, self-control, appreciation of beauty and excellence, gratitude, hope, humor, and spirituality. I think that's a really good list to look at in terms of figuring out how to articulate what you like about a person. So, for example, you could say, I really love your curiosity. I've noticed that you often try out new things like restaurants or crafts. I found myself inspired to venture out a little bit more by you. Someone wrote, with each compliment given, a bond is strengthened, trust is built, and conversation is encouraged. Any effort to express appreciation can boost your well-being as well as the person to whom you extend your caring. Robert Kravitz said, 3 billion people on the face of the earth go to bed hungry every night, but 4 billion go to bed every night hungry for a simple word of encouragement and recognition. We need to do this more for one another because it's really, we are starved for these kind of things. I see a typo, I gotta fix it. So you can also do something meaningful, but it doesn't have to be big, something little but meaningful for someone who you care about. This could be, for example, like extending a hug. That has to be virtually right now during the pandemic, cooking a casserole for somebody, doing a chore for a family member that they hate doing, asking somebody to just share something that's bothering them, just saying, I'd like to just give you the gift of my listening, and I wonder if there's something that's bothering you that might be helpful to talk about. The gift of listening is more powerful than people realize. People would often say to me, well, what can I do? What can I say after somebody's had a loss, and they're afraid they're going to say something stupid, or they're going to make the person think about the person who died while the person's already thinking about the person who died. But what I often say to people is the greatest gift you can give is to just listen. When people need to talk about someone they love that's passed away, they often just want to revisit memories about that person or talk about that person. You don't have to come up with some fancy words to fix it. You can't fix it. It's a terrible loss, and it's just going to take time. But if you give the gift of listening, you convey to that person that they're not alone with their pain. And that is probably one of the greatest gifts you can ever give another human being, is the knowledge that they don't have to be alone. Because so often people are grieving, for example, but they don't want to upset other people, and people are acting anxious like they don't know what to do. So they'll just kind of like say, oh, I'm okay, I'm okay. Better for them is the friend that says, come on, you're not okay. Why don't you sit down and talk to me a little bit? I'll just listen. I'm not going to give you advice. I'm not going to try to tell you what to do, but I just want to know what's going on with you. And that's one of the greatest gifts you can ever give another human being. Um, Other little things you can do is encouraging them or helping them to do something they've always wanted to do. Maybe they've wanted to take a cooking class, but they're kind of, oh, they're shy. They're not good at looking things up on the computer. Find a cooking class online for them. Go to the cooking class with them if they're kind of introverts and don't find it easy to go into an unfamiliar place. There's all kinds of things you can really do that are very meaningful. And even just looking somebody in the eye and saying, you make my world a better place. It's a little thing you can do. You can do it every day. Um, if you really want to commit to this idea of doing a gratitude journal or putting gratitude into your life, where you can pair up with somebody and have them be your gratitude partner, I find it's always easier to do things if you have somebody that's doing it with you. You can express gratitude through artistic activities, photography, poetry, music, watercolors. It doesn't always have to be words, and it doesn't, if you have an artistic bent, and you know what, I think we all can be creative. That's another way sometimes to express your gratitude. You can make a photo album of things you're grateful for, whether you take pictures of them or see things in the magazines that represent them, or, you can even go online to Google Images and think, well, I'm really grateful for the beach. And, you can Google images of the beach, and put that in your gratitude journal. Other things you can do are things like notice the beauty in nature. Watch inspiring videos that remind you of the good in the world. I have a list of them at the end of your handout. There's one called I Am, a great documentary. This is a guy who had been a movie producer. I'm blanking on his name, but he produced a lot of Eddie Murphy movies, no, Jim Carrey movies. And he had an accident on his bike, and he ended up with a pretty significant brain injury. And in order to recover from that, he had to just retire into a dark room for long periods of time. And after that accident, he looked around his life and he said, I had like 3 or 4 McMansions. I had all the toys anybody could want, and yet it didn't make me happy. And I knew this was not really what was going to matter at the end of my life. So he decides he's going to go out and try to interview people and try to figure out what's wrong with the world and how can we fix it. And he found that as he was interviewing people, what also struck him was what was right about the world. And so his video called I Am is a documentary about that, and I would really recommend it. You probably get it on Netflix. You can buy it on Amazon pretty cheap as well. So watch inspiring videos, especially right now when it's hard to stay upbeat. I know the pandemic's getting even to me, and good days and bad, but inspiring stuff. It's easy to just see the bad in the world right now, and yet there is so much good. Do a weekly act of kindness. Volunteer. If you're really interested, there are ways to volunteer online, even during the pandemic. That was in one of my last handouts. I don't remember if it was the first one I did on the pandemic or the second, but if anybody particularly wants that, let me know. Oh, let me turn off that phone. Okay. What are some other things you can do? Post inspiring material and quotes around your house. One of my favorite quotes is, if your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. I think it's a really good one. You can print it out on nice paper and put it around your house. Get involved with a cause. Or, if you make mistakes in life, see it as a growth opportunity rather than being judgmental. That's a very nice way to treat yourself as opposed to beating yourself up. For those who serve you in some capacity, consider giving them a bigger tip than usual. We made a big sign, big heart sign. We put it out by the garbage cans, and it said, "Thank you, sanitation and recycling workers." And we taped to it 2 bags that had candy and chips and water in it, and for them to take and consume during the day. I think there were some healthy things in there, but I have to admit I probably put more goodies than that. And it's a simple thing. Mailman, mailwoman, put a note in there thanking them, along with, again, a bag of treats and maybe a bottle of water. All the people working out in the stores right now who aren't being seen necessarily as heroes and aren't being treated like heroes, but if they weren't working in those stores, we wouldn't be able to go and get our groceries. I never go through a line without saying to the person at the end, after I've made my purchase, "Thank you for being here," because I wouldn't be able to get things I need if you weren't. So take time to acknowledge people. Tell their boss they're doing a good job. Whenever I've had a good experience and I write a thank you note, I always try to CC the person's boss, so that that person knows that the person that works for them is a good ambassador for their hotel or whatever I'm thanking them for. Leave a note for people, thanking them for things. Bring people a cup of coffee. Um, Exhibit patience. That's an act of kindness when you're standing online to check out. To be patient instead of impatient and sort of fidgeting and everything. Show gratitude and appreciation also for yourself. For example, make a list of ways you've done a good job. Make a list of challenging things that you've tackled and managed to get through. Treat yourself to something that brings you pleasure. Maybe it can't always be ice cream, although I'm not sure that's not true. But it can be. It can be things that you can treat yourself to stuff that tastes good, and just really take the time to savor it and appreciate it. So treat yourself to something that brings you pleasure, on a regular basis. Write down 3 things you like about yourself. Write yourself a gratitude letter. Schedule a play date with yourself and go have some fun. Get a massage. I don't know if you can do that right now. I'm sure there's some places that are open that practice safe ways of doing that. And reach out and let others be a source of support for you. We are so geared toward being support for others that we sometimes forget that we need to lean in. So one way to be grateful and appreciative of yourself is to let others be there for you. I think one of the easiest things that another person can give you is physical touch. We are all so starved for touch. Susan was speaking to someone who was grieving. She's a grief counselor, and the person said, the hardest part is she just doesn't have anybody who can hold her while she cries. And, I think there are so many of us who don't have somebody who can hold us when we cry, and yet that's probably the deepest way we can be comforted. I've always wanted to open up mommy mansions, which would be hotels where you could check in and be taken care of by mothering figures. I think we're all so starved for that. So if anybody has a small fortune they want to invest in the mommy mansions, give me a call. But be good to yourself. Be grateful to yourself. Be grateful for the things that you've taken the time to face and get through in life. So express gratitude to yourself. There was one suggestion for a prompt: name 5 body parts that you're grateful for. I think that's so important because women are especially taught not to like their bodies. So to stop and be grateful for parts of your body seems like a really important thing to do. Now I'm going to end with a few quotes, and then I'm going to see if we have any questions that have been posted. So Marcel Proust said, "Let us be grateful to the people who make us happy. They are the charming gardeners who make our souls blossom." And Mary Davis said, "The more grateful I am, the more beauty I see." And finally, Albert Schweitzer said, "At times our own light goes out and it is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us." And we, by simply expressing gratitude to others, can also be that spark in somebody's life. So stop and think about that. Again, I hope you have the handout. If not, reach out to Sandra. You can reach out to me. My email address is just my name in small letters, judithpearson@juno.com. But you'll see that I have resources on how to do a gratitude journal. I have a library of resources from a webpage called gratefulness.org. There's all kinds of gratefulness added apps that you can put on your phone. For example, Live Your Best Life, the only gratitude app that comes with free coaching, community, and rewards. Somebody had this, and I was glad to put this on here. The 34 best TED Talks and videos on the power of gratitude. I don't know how many of you watch TED Talks, but they are fantastic usually. So there's a list of 34 of the best ones that discuss gratitude. There's templates for doing gratitude trees with the kids. There's gratitude meditation that you can look at. In terms of inspiring materials, there's a link to CNN Heroes. There's information about that movie I mentioned called I Am. There's something called Yes Magazine, which looks at positive things that people are doing in the universe. There's just a ton of the Daily Good, news that inspires, Project Happiness, and then I have a list of reading suggestions. All right, so I think we just about ended on time. I'm going to stop and see if there's any questions. Matt, do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions. There's one message that I'll share with you after the live event.
Okay. Well, I want to say how grateful I am that you've all tuned in to watch this. How grateful I am that I have an opportunity to talk about this stuff because, in order to do these presentations, I have to research these topics and I learn something new every time. And so I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity to do it. I'm grateful that I have an audience of people who seem to appreciate it. And I want to thank you all for being here and join us next month. All right, best to everybody.